Welcome to 80s TV Ladies, where we explore the fabulous female-driven television shows of the 1980s with your hosts, Susan Lambert-Haddam and Sharon Johnson.
80s TV ladies, so sexy and so pretty. 80s TV ladies, stepping out into the city. 80s TV ladies, often treated kind of working hard for the money in a man's world. 80s TV ladies.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susan.
And I'm Sharon. And that was Melissa Roth, our producer, who introduced us. We've been up in the business of exploring Cagney and Lacey. It starred two women detectives who were really cool ladies of the 80s and liked to solve crimes. This groundbreaking police procedural drama aired on CBS from 1982 to 1988.
It spawned several TV movies, was nominated for 37 Emmys, won 14 of them. In previous episodes, we have had the great pleasure of talking with the creator of the show, Barney Rosenzweig, the show's stars, Miss Cagney herself, Sharon Gless, and of course, Tyne Daly, who played her partner, Mary Beth Lacey. We also interviewed director Karen Arthur. It has been a treasure trove of coolness and awesomeness and Cagney and Lacey-ness.
If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. You can absolutely start here with this amazing episode. Or if you want to start the Cagney and Lacey series from the beginning, roll it on back to the episode entitled Barney Rosenzweig, Part 1.
Cagney and Lacey had two female leads, were well-drawn individuals, distinguishing themselves in a male-dominated field. They are the heroes of these stories and solving the crimes throughout the whole 5 seasons and 4 TV movies.
As we have with Scarecrow Mrs. King and Remington Steele, it's now time to get the perspective of our 90s TV babies to hear what they have to say about this show.
Please welcome back to 80s TV Ladies, the smart and sassy, clever and classy 90s TV babies, Serita Fontanesi, Sergio Perez, and Megan Ruble. Welcome back, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been so long because we had a lot of episodes in between.
So many.
It's really exciting.
So booked and busy, as they say.
That's
Yeah.
right. All right. I want to hear from each of you how you guys are doing. Just something lovely that's happened to you recently. Sergio, do you want to start?
Sure, why not? This morning I made a quiche. Yeah.
What kind?
It was a mushroom, pepper, onion, with a little bit of chicken sausage in there. It's my first ever quiche that I've ever made. And it was delicious.
Oh my God. Is there any left? Are you going to bring some over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my
All
gosh,
right.
I could totally bring some.
Okay. I want to taste it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Well, congratulations. I don't have to think. I have never made a quiche.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
I've never made a quiche. Megan, have you made a quiche?
I have made a quiche, but I'm sure that Sergio's is excellent because he's an excellent chef. So,
Oh, stop that, you. Stop that.
I'm booked through the end of the year.
For acting roles.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I was in a feature 2 weeks ago. I've lost track of time. And I have the Shakes on the Rocks things that I do quarterly. And I'm doing 48-hour film festival again. And then I'm doing a Polar Express experience through the end of the year.
Okay. Do you want
I'm
to?
booked.
That is really fantastic. Congratulations. You're the
Yeah, thank
busiest
you.
woman I know, and you've gotten busier. So that's great.
We'll see if I make it through this without another mental breakdown. But
Just schedule it for January.
exactly,
Like we all do.
You can schedule. Yeah, you can schedule mental breakdowns. That works.
Congratulations. That is fantastic. Tell us about the feature.
Oh, it's nothing crazy exciting. It was like a rom-com, but I didn't audition for it. It was a direct booking. The director liked me for something else, and it didn't work out. And he's like, I just wanted to meet you, so I moved you over to this. I was like, okay, hi, hello, here I am.
Fantastic. That's pretty great. Congratulations. Does
Yeah,
the
thank
feature
you.
have a title?
Yeah, but I can't even remember it.
Okay.
It's like
Wow.
it's
She's
a rom-com,
booking
so
so much. She can't be bothered.
it's like a rom-com, so it's some dumb thing like Lucky
Miss You
Strike.
Tomorrow, you know?
It's Lucky something. Lucky Stiff is a musical, so I don't know why I'm keep thinking of that.
Lucky to Meet You.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, something like that.
Lucky Boy. Well, we should just come up with rom-com names.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah. Lucky in Love, Unlucky in Love, something along those lines.
Yes. Lucky Love and Laughter. I'm in.
Yeah.
I watch any of these. Okay. All right. Serita, you're up.
I've discovered a new flavor of LaCroix that I very much enjoy, hibiscus.
Ooh.
Find it at your local grocery store. And 2, Gus, my puppy, has officially learned how to ring the bell to go out.
Wow.
We're very excited.
That's fantastic.
I didn't know that was a thing
There
you
you
could
go.
make dogs do.
Absolutely, you can, which is very helpful for a large but oddly quiet dog.
How did you teach him how to do that?
So every time we opened the door for him to go outside, we would jingle the bell and then we'd open the door so that he would associate the bell with the door opening. Then we hung the bell like at nose level and we would jingle it at nose level in front of him. Although he's blind, so I don't know how much that really did anything. And then we'd open the door. So again, associating the bell with the door. And then eventually he would just be curious and sort of hidden and it would make a noise and we'd immediately open the door so that he learned, again, you ring that bell, that door is opening. So now we have to work on only using it to go out because he likes to use it for in and outs. And as I've told him, I'm not air conditioning the outside, so you pick one. And we used to have a fly screen, but he destroyed it because he is still a puppy, you guys. Don't give him too much credit.
I'm
So
impressed
now
with Gus.
we're working on learning discernment.
Well, sure. What all dogs need to learn.
Absolutely.
I got this like kind of lame, like just it's like this furry cactus thing because I was standing in line and I'm a sucker at the pet store and I got it. And it is now Luna's favorite thing that I've ever gotten her. She keeps taking it into her crate and then taking it out in the morning. And she's never really gone more than like 2 days excited about something. And that's usually because Bowie has basically destroyed it within 2 days, but got to bring my cactus. It's, it's a furry, soft cactus, not an actual cactus. It's a stuffed animal, but
Other things Gus does, he sleeps with a ball in his mouth quite often. We also got his DNA results. He is 29% pit, 21% husky, 10% chow, and like 7% Great Pyrenees, and then a bunch of other stuff. So,
Wow.
a giant. I have a horse, right?
we got Bowie, who is our big dude. He looks like almost like a polar bear mixed with a sea lion. In terms of like
He took all of Luna's.
yeah, like Luna's the smallest of the bunch. They're brother and sister from the same litter, and she was the runt, and he was like way bigger than everybody else. And he's got Chihuahua.
What?
This giant dog is part Chihuahua. There was a lot.
Right, but to be in like the top
But be in the top
five
five.
when they name it. Yeah. That's
like,
wild.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, for our dog podcast, we'll save all that stuff. Meanwhile, we're here. We're going to talk about Cagney Lacey today. Because you guys have thrown us on 2 shows in some ways, and you guys haven't agreed, and somewhat you have agreed, but it's been always a surprise. I'm very curious. Tell us what you had to watch.
I'm going to go for it. And
Yeah.
somebody tell me if I'm wrong. We were supposed to watch the TV film, which was the pilot, I guess, originally. Season 1, episode 1. And then season 2, episode 1. So 3 different actresses
3 Cagneys.
with each 3 Cagneys, 1 for each episode.
And Heat.
I was going to say, did anybody do the bonus assignment of Heat?
I didn't get to. No.
I watched Heat
Serena.
on Pluto TV.
Oh, Pluto, are you listening?
That's where I found
Yeah.
season 2, episode 2. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did not get a chance to watch Heat, but
Oh,
I get what I will say, and yes, maybe this will be my take on it, was I am looking forward to watching Heat because I enjoyed Cagney and Lacey,
mm-hmm.
which this might be the first one that I've actually said, no, I liked it.
All right. Well, let's keep going. All right. So Serita, why don't you keep going with that? And I'm curious about your takes on the Cagneys and the movie, the TV movie versus the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, definitely pro 2 leading ladies, right? That's great. That's fun. We're already off to a good start. No men. Next.
Ding, ding,
Like
ding.
I am a sucker for a like cop procedural. Like I know that it's propaganda. I know that Olivia Benson isn't real, but like I just really maybe it soothes me because it's predictable. But like, you know, there's a crime to solve with some underlying drama, and everything sort of gets wrapped up at the end of the episode. And we've got the classic dynamic of like shooting from the hip, wild child, and buttoned up, like, but there are rules. And I'm a sucker. I really am.
Serita's in.
They got me.
All right. Who's next?
I'm very similar to Serita, actually, in that I love a procedural. And they don't really, or at least I don't watch any that are coming out right now. And so it's really refreshing to watch them. Also love a cop procedural, especially set in New York. I watched a lot of NYPD Blue as a kid, so I feel like that's just sort of ingrained in me somewhere. So yeah, very similar. Love that. Love that it was 2 women. I will say for my first hot take, if it even is a hot take, I'm a really big MASH fan. So I, of course, loved, oh my gosh, and now I'm blanking on the actress's name.
Loretta Swit.
Yes. Yeah. I loved her as Cagney. And apart from my deep love of MASH, I thought that the dynamic between the 2 of them was the most separate and therefore the most exciting. I like understood who each of them were a little pitted against each other and coming together within that dynamic. I also liked and kind of appreciated the honesty of the storyline that was going on with Lacey's husband in the original pilot. The like honesty of like things weren't, he was trying to be supportive, but he had his own issues, and she was trying to be supportive of him, but she was also trying to like have a career. And like him, the storyline that was set up of him possibly slowly becoming more and more of an ally, I kind of liked that. And when it transitioned to this TV show, I didn't see that quite as much. It seemed like he was just more on Team Lacey, which love it. But I wanted to see that journey. So I really like the TV movie the best, if I'm being even with the theme song dropping in every like 30 seconds. I think I still liked it best.
All right.
Ain't that the way? Ain't that the way? I think you've got a pretty unanimous like collection of folks here. I liked Cagney and Lacey. I will say, I think my favorite of the Cagneys was actually Meg Foster.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That is a hot take. Let's
I
go.
think it was
Why?
actually Meg Foster. And I think it, because even after like, I did some like reading outside of like the stuff, and it was a lot of stuff about like, oh, network executives were like watching each one and saying, oh, we don't want the audience to code or for Cagney to code as lesbian and tough, because that's going to be an issue, and the audience is probably going to have a tough time relating to her. So we're going to recast her to be more of like a snobby, like you're feminine, like little, like whatever. That's not that tough, like lesbian woman. And so I don't know, there's something about just that dynamic between Meg Foster's Cagney and Lacey that I really enjoyed watching. So that's what I have.
I love that. How did you guys feel about Meg Foster?
I was going to say similar. Like, I was like, Cagney is a lesbian. Like,
I was saying, yes.
Let's own it. Let's lean into it. Like, I know that was not the goal, I guess, whatever, but she is clearly coded lesbian. So for me, the other Cagneys weren't quite hitting it, because I was like, this is not my mask lesbian queen.
Yeah, I will say I enjoyed all 3 of them in their own separate way. Like any love I have for Loretta Swit is because of I just love her. But yeah, I liked all 3 of them in different ways. I would have enjoyed the show with any of them.
What an interesting exercise. I mean, as an actress, I'm curious, like watching each of them, which they made some similar choices and they also made some different choices. It was just really intriguing to me, the different Cagneys.
Yeah. And how to Tyne Daly's credit, how she kind of countered and adjusted while keeping the same character and being the same person, how she like met each of them too. Like that's a very big compliment to her abilities to be able to just sort of become a new puzzle piece to meet the new puzzle piece that entered the TV show.
I hadn't thought about that before, but that makes so much sense. Yeah, what Tyne Daly had to do.
And she talks about, so she was really sad to lose Meg Foster. She actually, in the interview that we did with her, she talks about basically trying to go to whoever was in charge. Like that decision was higher than Barney, the creator of the show. And so she went and had lunch and she's like, what if I, demanded that it stay Meg Foster? And they were like, why don't you just fire yourself? Like,
because she wasn't Tyne Daly at that point. So they probably wouldn't have had any reason to feel like they listen.
Yeah. They were basically saying you better just keep your mouth shut and be happy you have a job to a degree. Because it was happening, I guess.
Oh, this is so interesting. I guess because Sharon Gless is so ingrained to me in that role, I never really either knew or remembered that there were any other Cagneys. The other two just felt like sort of off isn't quite the right word, but just weren't quite Cagney, the Cagney I had in my head when I watched them. But so that's really interesting. That's really interesting.
So I vaguely thought there were two Cagneys, but not really. I had no idea until we started down this path that there were three. And a big Loretta Swit fan. And I love the TV movie in some way because it's pretty New York. It's more New York. And it almost feels like a late 70s TV movie.
Yes, it really does. In fact, I had to keep reminding myself it was the 80s. Like even some of the like things that they're wearing, I was like, yeah, 70. No, wrong decade.
It's like 81, like 80, 81. So like, and I think for me, maybe this is like the costumer in me coming out, where it's like, to me, like that made it feel even more 80s because like they're cops. They're not going to be like on trend. And so like these are the outfits that they always wear. And maybe, and like as you get further in the season, and part of it is just like, TV shows get more budget and can do more stuff. But like it made sense to me for everything to feel ever so slightly dated because what government institution is like up to standard, right? And that was something that I loved.
I just laughed so hard at that Zoom asked me to unmute.
Here's one of the thoughts that I had when I was watching Meg Foster. We're going to try to get Meg Foster on the phone. We're going to get her. Let's get her on the phone right now. Quick. Melissa.
Here's our
to
surprise
the bat
guest.
Phone.
Yes.
To the 80s TV ladies phone. It would be interesting to talk to those actresses and see if they had any idea whatsoever that there might be a lesbian element to the character. I would be very curious about that. And I want to talk about the word coded because both you, Sergio, and Serita used that word. Give me the definition of that word from your perspective.
I'm about to give the most like Gen Z answer to what coded perhaps means. And it's really, and I don't know how to explain this any better, just a vibe that you receive.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a vibe that you receive from the way that it's performed and the way that it's like not so much as the way it's been written, but the way that the actor interprets what they've been given. And I'm like, yeah, I'm watching it and I'm watching the way that these characters are interacting and just witnessing Meg Foster like navigating the first episode. There's just a vibe.
And it's also like, I think in like modern like TV and film, it is done a little more intentionally of like this character isn't explicitly, it is most often seen like with queer characters. Like this person isn't explicitly clear, but like, they're talking about maybe going to like parties in certain neighborhoods and the types of friends that they have. And like, and it all becomes the like, if you are paying attention or you know what you're hearing, right? The girls who get it will get it. And the ones who don't won't. And that's okay. I think a really recent like version of this that is sort of in the cultural zeitgeist is Velma in Scooby-Doo is officially a queer character in the like latest reboot. And she has been like a queer icon and like, again, coded as like, I think of it as like this person's identity might not be explicitly stated, but if someone told you Velma's gay, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's not always written. It's usually in the acting, but sometimes now it is written.
I was going to say, and please correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding was always that it's coded as sort of, if someone is queer, a character is queer coded, it's that they were either written or performed as if they are queer without explicitly stating that they are so. So vibe. Back to Sergio's definition.
Back to me. It's a vibe.
It's a vibe.
Well, I think I can say with a degree of certainty that was never the intent at the time. That was definitely not something that was in anybody's mind because it was almost 40 years ago and they weren't thinking that way. So do you think maybe that's something that you're actually, based on your experience in watching other content where something like this perhaps might be happening, that's something you're putting on the show, that you're applying to the show as opposed to the show giving that to you? Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that question makes any sense.
It's like what we know now.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what we know now, we can look back at this show and go, hey, Cagney might have been a lesbian. And even though, they gave her all these other storylines in that original conceit of the show and the conceit of the characters, just as possible to write Cagney as a lesbian, for sure. You could start at where they start with that character. And if you said, oh, in 2 seasons, we're going to have the coming out episode, or the, oh, it's revealed episode, or never reveal it, but she would be single and dating, whoever. There's certainly in the early episodes, Cagney could be bi because she was so written as, I am in charge of my own sexuality and I really am free to choose as much or little as I want of it. And the men in those early episodes that she's with are not relationships. They're encounters.
In the way that a male cop would have had a progression of sexual partners. But the thing is in this show, it's a woman that's basically doing what we've seen and continue to see men doing. But nobody. So I'm sorry. It's
because here's the question. Because ultimately they did recast that role for reasons that everybody tells a slightly different story of. Basically, the network decided it because they just didn't like her. There's some that they were both brunettes. It was really kind of hard to tell them apart. I don't know, but.
Can we just have a moment for the reality that they look like completely different people? They are completely different people.
I'm just saying.
That's exactly the kind of thing, though, you would expect somebody to say when they cannot completely articulate what it is that they don't feel that this person
I think
is
that's
right.
Something that we're really used to experiencing within marginalized communities, right? You can't have 2 Black leads because who gets to be the most diverse? Just dumb stuff that ultimately boils down to these really heavy systemic things. And so I think coming back to that question of was she meant to be coded as queer, or is it our modern understanding of queer culture being put on her? Probably somewhere in the middle. But I very much could see a character that's supposed to be this tough, kind of more masculine woman in a traditionally male role to begin with, already challenging, played by an actor who was very firm about, her business, her life, and her boundaries, challenging. And then if even someone is getting wind somewhere of people might think she's gay. In the time period, very easily be we gotta shut that down.
We gotta shut it down.
Yeah, like we're going to have a more femme, like, oh, she's just a lady who's into her sexuality, which is cool and a vibe all in and of itself. But for that to be the thing to come after it, and it almost feels that they're like, look, she's with men. She's with men. She's with men. That it's like, okay, methinks thou doth protest too much.
Honestly, I think it's more likely that it came down to somebody who is in a position to make a decision saying, I'm not attracted to her. Therefore, she has to go because I just don't think she's attractive.
I do think that we are now realizing how many giant network decisions were made basically like that. So, not impossible. Here's one of my theories. And I love Meg Foster. I think she's phenomenal. And I think she makes a very good Cagney for me. I like them all, actually, a lot. I do think that Sharon Gless, and it was probably because, again, that was the Cagney that I remember too. Because Meg Foster has those incredible eyes. There's something really unique about her eyes. They're absolutely gorgeous. And yet they're also so unique that you almost can't stop looking at them. And she looks like she's looking at everyone in a particular way. And that was something that I was watching with Rich, and I was like, she looks like she would sleep with anyone she's speaking to right now.
Which I support. And also, I will say that her eyes are a plot point through a season of Pretty Little Liars. For all my PLL friends, she plays Mrs. Griswold, the tragically, mysteriously blind teacher who's got secrets to help figure out who A is. There's a huge thing about her eyes and how they look.
I love that.
Wow. That's amazing.
I didn't know that. Thank you. I'm on it. Now I'm in. I got to go catch that. It's been on the queue. I just, never got to it. Now I got to go get to it.
Fascinating.
Anyway, so when I do think, I have no doubt that there was somebody there that, again, that what you were saying, the whiff of, well, someone might think, because two women working together, what else would they be doing, right? The cover of, Ms. Magazine when this show came out was, can two women work together? It was really a question, which is insane, right? It's insane. But it is also that TV thing of, we have to have one white cop and one black cop. You couldn't possibly have two black cops. That's ridiculous. So I think whatever it was, they decided it was working, even though the show was kind of working, right? The first couple episodes, they were in a slot that was really bad, a TV slot. And then they moved them. They were after Magnum PI, which was an 8:00 kid show, basically, because I was watching that. Because, Tom Selleck, Ferrari, let's solve some crimes in Hawaii.
Don't forget awesome. The shorts.
The shorts. He swam every morning. That's all I wanted to do. And I was like, holy crap. I want to go swim in the ocean every morning of my life and walk back to work at my mansion. That isn't even mine. I don't even have to take care of it. I just live there. We should all be Magnum PI.
That sounds great. I'm in.
Let's go.
Sign me up.
Anyway, I don't even know what the point was.
Oh, you were talking about how it was on at 8:00.
Oh, it was on it. So it was on
after Magnum PI.
It was run on after Magnum PI. It was not the follow to that show. When it got canceled, or they were like, yeah, no, we're going to cancel this, or we're going to move it to another night because we're going to dump it. Then they had this other show they had just canceled called Simon and Simon, which had a terrible first few episodes or whatever it was. And they're like, just dump the rest of those episodes behind Magnum. Then it became a huge freaking hit because it was the perfect follow-up to Magnum PI, because it was two guys running around solving crimes, being cool. You guys probably don't remember Simon and Simon. We can't cover it. But, let me tell you, it was adorable. Gerald McRaney, Jameson Parker.
They were brothers.
They were just two crazy brothers. One was kind of straight-laced. One was an ex-Vietnam vet.
Wore a cowboy hat.
I mean, I think the thing we're kind of circling around here is that you have a formula that works. You have two people that are inherently kind of different, that care about each other, that you have the bottom line of a buddy comedy, right? They love each other. They sometimes disagree. They're forced to work together, and then they have a new crime to solve every single week. That's a formula that just works. What I think we've struggled with societally sort of is that you can plug any two people into those roles and it still works. We're just have sexist and racist and all kinds of other issues. And so we can't see that it's just the difference in personality that makes it work, that makes them clash and come together. And yeah, sure, you can capitalize on like other societal or background things, but really what works is that you have two people that care about each other and are different and have a common goal. That works. And so like Sharon was saying, like, yeah, Cagney is filling a role that kind of is traditionally filled by a man, at least before this and kind of still now. That is the like, yeah, I'm in charge of my sexuality and I have sexual encounters when I want to and I don't have them when I don't want to. And that works because it's just a personality type, right? So like plugging a woman into it is like, yeah, okay, all right, now this person does that.
Okay, so we're going to take a little break and come back. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I want to go to Sergio for a minute and talk about... Sergio is smiling. He knows he's up.
Yeah, my box has been dinged.
Ding.
Ding.
Talk more about the Sharon Gless, because you didn't talk a lot about whether the Sharon Gless Cagney... Because you liked the Meg Foster.
I liked the Meg Foster Cagney.
Yeah.
I do think that Sharon Gless showing up season 2, episode 1, very strong, like initial episode. And that's also just because of the plot. Like I was expecting like procedural, like, oh, every episode there's going to be somebody to shoot or like there's going to be a door to break down or something. But this one where it was really just like psychological between the two of them and like what their ideologies are. And how different those two characters are. Like, I thought that was really cool. And I mean, I wasn't as focused on the performance so much as just the conflict between the two characters because I watched the movie and then I watched episode 1 of the first season. And there were just like a lot of things peppered throughout in those that like showed you exactly who they were, where it was like, oh, one of them's going to take the elevator, the other's going to take the stairs, but they're both going to get to the top floor at the same time. Like it's something about that just really tickles me because I really like that kind of thing. Like the formula works. Like Megan was saying, like you could plug any two people. You could plug in the person who takes the elevator. You can plug in the person who takes the stairs, and they're going to get into conflict and they're going to solve these crimes together, and it's going to be entertaining to watch. And it's really just bread and butter for the industry, I guess. Like they keep pumping them out.
Yeah, it's pretty classic because it gives you conflict, but it also gives you a relationship to sort of hang on, and that relationship can break apart and come together. I think that the buddy part of this is so interesting because there are people that may not be friends if they weren't working together, right? Mm-hmm. Which is kind of interesting. So, Sergio, you also watched Heat.
I did watch Heat.
I'm curious because that comes fourth season. So it's pretty deep into the thing. And it's a pretty unique episode. Won the Emmy for directing for Karen Arthur, the director. She was the first woman. I'm just going to shout her out every episode. First woman to win an Emmy for directing ever, 1985. This episode, the Heat episode of Cagney Lacey. Mm-hmm. I'm curious your thoughts on that compared to the other show. And again, it's pretty unique. It's pretty bottle episode. It takes place kind of in one place.
From the jump, I was like, okay, first shot, stray dog in a random lot, pan up, you see the patrol car coming in. They're going to get out and they're going to set up like, oh, there are kids here. They're shooting out the windows with rocks or whatever. Just from that, there's like a lot of tension in a hostage situation. And I also think it's really cool how at the very beginning of the episode, they established like, oh, we're in a heat wave. It is hot. And throughout the entire thing, everybody's sweating. And it's like, oh yeah, the way that we're going to get him, we're going to tell him there's air conditioning in that place over there. And he's going to want to go there. And then they get him there. They're like, psych, joke's on you. We didn't turn it on. It's not working. Like to do that, you have to go out. That I think really helped me. And it's funny because like when you watch like just one episode for each season, you miss everything in between and you miss all of that. And so like seeing the jump from just season 1, season 2 to now season 4. Here I am, and Cagney's just like, that's her friend in there. Like, she's very, very deeply affected by that. And it was just like we were saying, these aren't people that we'd expect to be friends. And like, that's her partner. And she keeps saying like, my partner's in there. They get Harvey in. Like, he's like, my wife's in there. And they both just in crisis. And I there's something about that that's really tickling, satisfying. I don't know if tickling's a word. It's not.
No, but you know what? I get it. And just to recap it, basically, Lacey is taken hostage.
Yes.
In a train yard by a bad dude played by Michael Madsen, early Michael Madsen, from Diner and The Natural and then Kill Bill and all sorts of things now.
Mm-hmm.
But this is very early. It's right after Diner, which was kind of the movie that broke him out. So he's the hostage taker guy, and he's a really freaking out bad dude who's also in a heat wave. And so he first locks her in with him in a train car sitting in the sun. But it's very much, it almost feels like it's shot with one shot or something. There's something very unique about how this movie, it feels like a movie. This episode is shot. And it was, one of the reasons was it was actually a new cinematographer. Tom Neuwirth came on to that episode. It was shot first. It was the episode was shot to be the first episode of season 4, but then they decided not to launch because it was such an intense episode. They basically cut it to not have the opening little, we're jaunting through New York, like we're cool ladies jaunting through New York. So they don't have it. They just start in the episode. You start with, they're looking for somebody, and then suddenly they're in a hostage situation. And so it's shot very uniquely from the earlier episodes, even though I like the way the show is shot. But the interesting thing is it was like Karen Arthur had directed a couple of episodes by then. It was her first time working with Tom Neuwirth, who was a new DP they brought on. Ultimately, they ended up getting married. They met on that show, on that episode where she won a directing Emmy. She also that same year directed a TV movie called The Rape of Richard Beck, about a cop who gets raped and has to deal with that. And the actor, who I'm suddenly blanking on, Richard Crenna, won an Emmy for that performance, directed by Karen Arthur. So that year, she was like, oops, I can't say that. We'll bleep it out. Anyway, that's a little sidebar because I love Karen Arthur now. She's my new BF.
There's a lot of restraint in the way that
I think something about Heat. I'm sorry. Something about Heat that really like makes me think about the other episodes though is just the fact that like Lacey's stuck in the train car and is being held hostage, and all the people who are negotiating with the hostage taker, all these men in her life, and she's just at the whim of all of them, and her life is literally hanging in the balance. And even just like the plainclothes episode where they're like, okay, now go out onto the street where we know somebody's killing all these people. Just your life is going to hang in the balance, but we're going to sit here at our desks and just be nice and comfortable, and also make like racist remarks for literally no reason.
That's pretty shocking.
When that one came up, where they were like, yeah, this may take a while because you all look alike, to a group of Asian folks, and then it's never addressed. They never are like, oh, and this is the case that they're looking at. They just say it. I was like, what is going on? Like, what was this choice? Who made this?
All right, so let's talk about the progressive element of it. We've talked a little bit about the feminist element of it. I'm curious if there were other things that popped out at you.
And my first comment is always, not enough Black people.
Yes.
Carl Lumbly was putting in the work.
Yes. Carl Lumbly, I went to college and very good friends with his son, Brandon.
Oh, wow.
That was his son. I jumped on Brandon like a couple of weeks ago to a mutual friend's wedding.
Oh my God, that's so funny because I worked with Brandon.
Yes. Oh, yeah, you have. That's right.
For Homeward LA, which was funny because I should have put that together too in my head, and I forgot because I got told at the time, like, oh, this is Carl Lumbly. I was like, well, that's cool. But that was in the before time So I don't remember anything.
Did you tell him you had just been watching his?
But yes, so one, Carl putting in the work as he always does. Two, it was also just like a very fun moment of like, that's my friend's dad. He's come to see our plays before. And I will say Carl Lumley is a very kind and sweet man. So everyone, it is okay to love him.
Thank you.
Yes, that's very, very good to know because I have loved him since
sometimes
Cagney
you
and
get
Lacey.
to know about like
Yes.
an actor, you're like, yikes, not Carl Lumley. He's a sweetheart.
Good.
But yes, my go-to is always not enough Black people, a sign of the time. And also even thinking of like modern though, like it is like rare that you're going to see a Black lead, particularly in a cop procedural. Like Ice-T has been working on SVU. I'm tired for him.
Yes.
So I think this is one of the few times where I'm sort of like, yeah, there aren't enough Black people, but also like it is hard to fit Black people into this type of genre that isn't in a very like stereotype or like one-dimensional way. So I'm sort of like, we don't need to be involved. It's fine.
I will say for like 1 or 2, maybe 3 episodes, as far as I know, and I haven't watched all the Cagney and Lacey's. There's a lot of them. There is a Black female officer that comes in, I believe, the end of season 1, briefly, and then again in season 2. And so it's technically recurring, but not really. There's not much. But I was like, ooh, ooh, ooh. Could she could
Representation. What if we kept her? And I think there was supposed to be a remake of Cagney and Lacey, and Mary Beth was going to be played by a Black woman.
I think
I don't know what happened with that.
I don't
though.
know.
I don't remember hearing about that, but that would be great. I have no idea where we were.
We were at the Cagney and Lacey reboot.
Oh, yes.
Which I just looked up on the interwebs. And apparently there was one. So there was, of course, this is written impossibly to figure out.
Not to be confused
CBS.
with Denial, which was basically Cagney and Lacey on a different end.
Yes, basically Cagney and Lacey, for sure. CBS has officially passed from 2018. CBS has officially passed on the proposed Cagney and Lacey reboot.
2018? Wow.
But come on, we gotta get more out of it. Oh, there was a TV movie. Oh, that's the different. Wait, hold on. There's a Cagney and Lacey TV movie. Oh, it is. It's set in Los Angeles. 2 female private police detectives and friends keep the streets of Los Angeles safe. Sarah Drew, Ving Rhames, Michelle Hurd.
Oh my gosh.
There you go.
Michelle Hurd, who I love, speaking of Law and Order SVU.
And they passed on it. And so it was like a TV movie
Interesting.
directed by Rosemary Rodriguez, written by Bridget Carpenter.
I knew that. I remembered Sarah Drew had done a pilot for ABC and NBC, CBS, whatever. But I didn't remember it was Cagney and Lacey. Interesting.
What's kind of odd is there's no credit to the original show in this IMDb page, which seems like it would be hard to do without that. But who knows how the studios work? The great mystery of doing whatever they want. But yeah, so yeah, that is weird that reboot didn't go further.
Well, we were talking about representation in the early 80s, and it's certainly not something I thought about at the time. And I'm not surprised that it's not there when I go back and watch old shows now. Because frankly, there's not enough today. I was just thinking about the fact that the Law and Order reboot that's on right now, Anthony Anderson was playing one of the cops in the first season. He left after the last season, and they brought in another Black actor to play the partner of the white cop. And frankly, why wasn't it a woman? I mean, I know that their lieutenant is a woman, but so what? Why couldn't the cop have been a woman?
Because you can only have so much diversity on the. I have preached about this many times to friends of like I have a friend who anytime I'm like, oh, you should check out this show. They'll always ask, how gay is it? And I'm like, well, it's really like diverse racially, so not that gay. Or the alternative is very gay, very white. We are not allowed like fully expansive representation that allows people to live in the multiple intersections of life that we do. TV is like, look, we gave you 2 ladies. No way one of them is a lesbian. All right. They're both going to be upper middle class white gals. Like, we gave you a black guy and a white guy. What more? And there's a lady somewhere else on set. What more do you want from us? Like, the bar is in hell.
And, I don't expect...
Hold on. I just want to live with that line for a minute. The bar is in hell. That explains where we are.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And there's no way that every show can represent everything. That's fine. But why couldn't Anthony Anderson have been replaced by a female Asian cop, for goodness sake? I'm sure there must be some in the New York Police Department somewhere, I would think.
So it's so funny because I went down this dive. I was like trying to figure out if Cagney and Lacey actually changed the amount of women that started working for the NYPD Blue. That's what I have to say now. The TV cops. And so I found this thing. Of course, I don't have it pulled up because this was like 2 months ago when I started my Cagney and Lacey dive. But it was basically like, a report card of the NYPD from 1982. And they were listing like how many minorities and what races and gender. And they were then talking about what they were doing to recruit more. And it was pretty interesting. The numbers were really small. So it was not surprising there, but it was clearly stating we need to have a police force that represents what our city looks like. But we're having trouble doing that. It was basically like, they were like, we don't know why.
It's a puzzlement.
Why we can't get all these women and people of color to come work for these white men.
I don't want to turn this into a different podcast.
Well, I'm glad that you all enjoyed it. I'm glad that you all liked it. I am quite fascinated by the reaction to the 3 Cagneys. That's really interesting.
But I got excited because Sergio was right out front with, I love Meg Foster. She's my favorite.
Well, I think that's
All
enough.
Cagneys matter.
All Cagneys matter. Come on. We have
Log out.
really, again,
Log out.
this is, now we really have lost.
You gotta forget, it's like the end of the day for me. You're all on the West Coast.
That's right. You're like, it's like
My
nighttime.
computer's wearing off. The sun is setting.
Oh my God, your dogs are hungry. Okay, so just tell me your favorite Cagney.
Yeah, mine's Meg Foster.
Megan?
I guess I'll be the one that I gotta go with my girl. I gotta go with Loretta Swit. I love her. I've read a lot about like what Loretta Swit's role was on MASH and like specifically how she helped shape the character and like how she got them to stop using the term hot lips and like how she was responsible for a lot of the transition of that character and where that character ends up with at the end of the show is just like A+ 100%. So like, I don't know. I just love her.
Well, and it does go, that whole thing just goes to show you that timing is everything. If the Cagney and Lacey movie had come around a year later and she probably would have played Cagney in the show because by then MASH would have been over. But MASH was not done yet. And there's no way CBS is going to let her out of her contract to go do another show, even for their network. They're not going to do that.
I really liked Loretta Swit as well a lot. I think that the show would have been different and not as even because it was so clear that she was the star of that movie. She basically got to be the hero at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Lacey kind of disappears because it's Loretta Swit. She was a big giant star.
That actually is a really good point of that maybe I did enjoy her because it was only for that hour or hour plus that I spent with her versus like a recurring thing of it's supposed to be a buddy comedy and one person is clearly the lead. Yeah, that's a really good point.
I think, well, and again, it may have worked out but it was something I felt in the TV movie. I'm like, oh, this has become a Loretta Swit movie.
Mm-hmm.
Tyne Daly's strong and great and awesome. And the first half of the movie is pretty shared, but the second half of the movie is not. It's not as much Cagney and Lacey. It's Cagney.
Yes. And Lacey dealing with marital issues.
Yeah. And again, I one of the really interesting things about the show as you watch it over time is the Harvey character, Lacey's husband. There's more story to the TV movie in terms of that character, the beginning of that character, but they continue to evolve the Harvey and their relationship. And there's a lot of discussion within their relationship about how he's feeling about what she's doing and how that affects him and how what he thinks is affecting her. And I really thought that was pretty revolutionary for the time to be able to have those conversations and say, you can't tell me I can't do this job because it's making you uncomfortable, and he's pretty idealized in the show for the most part, but there are still those moments where you get to be like, oh, these are people in a male-female relationship navigating the fact that her job is more typically male, but also in some ways more important than his job. Sometimes he doesn't have a job. He's the super of the building, and that becomes, challenging when he wants to go back to construction work. But anyway, that was pretty, I don't think you guys got a lot of it outside the TV movie, but it's pretty interesting how they navigate that relationship in the show over time.
Especially since I can't think of another show. There may be one. I haven't seen everything. Certainly on network television where you have a husband like Harvey, who is not the lead. It's his wife is the character who is the lead of the show. And she is the one that's the focus and not him. I mean, I think in so many ways, all over the board, they did a great job with all of that and the writers and everything. You're right. He is somewhat idealized, but still they gave us a picture of that relationship.
And a relationship that arguably started out in a very patriarchal, more traditional vein.
Mm-hmm.
And then through circumstance became one where she became the bigger breadwinner, the more impactful career that impacted their lives more, and where the story basically is him supporting her as a support personnel to their lives, to managing their lives. I don't know. It's sort of a part of the show that I didn't appreciate as much when I was watching it. And I was like, well, I'm never getting married. And, well, I don't care about married people. They're dumb. Eat my words. Okay.
Can I ask just another question? Forgive me if I'm misremembering, but you all, I think, said that you like procedurals sort of in general, despite some of their problematic issue situations. I mean, as I described, I'm a Law and Order fan, but, it's another story. What other procedurals can you think of that either currently or in the past that you've watched that you enjoyed?
Law and Order SVU, Criminal Minds. And loved Spencer Reed so much,
Bones.
CIS, Bones. Veronica Mars is like kind of a procedural. It's in a weird gray area,
I'm going to be all over the place with that answer. Okay, so I already said NYPD Blue.
Mm-hmm.
I also grew up watching SVU. Streets of San Francisco. Hawaii Five-0, the original. I have not seen the remake. And then I would argue that the earlier seasons of Buffy are also a procedural because you have a monster of the episode usually, and then there's, similar to SVU and some other things, there's the other drama going on underneath. But for the most part, you have a different monster that you're dealing with every episode and then a big bad at the end. And so that, MASH is more a sitcom, I'd say, than it is a procedural, although it sort of is in its own category. But yeah, those are the ones that come to mind.
And this one might be I don't know if this counts. Psych.
I
For
think
sure
it's
counts.
definitely a
Oh,
procedural.
yeah.
Yeah.
Comedy.
And
Psych.
Monk from the same
Yeah.
time period. Monk too would have been a procedural. Yeah.
Gus is named after Burton Guster. That's my dog's official name. So beautiful.
That is so funny. I love that. Yeah, the procedurals, the other thing about this that, you don't necessarily get from 3 episodes was they're not necessarily doing a great job because it's still the 80s, but they're at least doing episodes where they talk about racism in the police department, where they talk about abortion, where they talk about immigration in a trying to be fairly progressive for the time.
And there was a great episode about domestic violence in which the perpetrator was a cop. And how do they deal with that? That really, it was one of the episodes that surprised me that they actually went there.
Yeah. And for the time, you're like, oh, no one's saying that, right?
Mhm.
Like, no one's talking about that. So there were interesting things where they were really trying on a lot of levels. And then you really can see where the blind spots are, right? Where you're like, oh, you're trying, but so one black man in the NYPD.
I actually had a question for you two
Sure.
that I don't know if you know the answer to, but I was thinking about season 2, episode 1. I was thinking specifically a lot about Brooklyn Nine-Nine and how Brooklyn Nine-Nine both made episodes that without anything specific in the news going on that were just like, we're going to talk about racism within the police department. We're going to talk about what prison is like and how that's not okay. And then they also had reactionary episodes that were very much like, this thing just happened, so we're going to make an episode and address it.
Yeah.
Was that sort of what Cagney and Lacey was doing? Was there something culturally or within the U.S. that happened and then they reacted to it? Or were they just going, we want to talk about this and this is our vehicle to talk about it?
I mean, I think that would be a really good question for Barney.
Yeah.
The TV movies of the 70s and 80s were actually really looking at some of these societal issues, right? The rape of Richard Beck, I don't think you could greenlight today. I feel like a lot of Cagney and Lacey was actually doing that on a series level because it's definitely like, oh, and here's the abortion episode. Although they deal with it, I think, more subtly than you would expect if you're like, we're going to do the abortion episode. It became storylines that were a little bit the trauma of the time that wasn't being talked about much, rather than one specific story. I know like Law and Order was ripping from the headlines. I don't get the sense that it was doing that, but there was a big thing in the show where Cagney sort of famously over the course of the show didn't like wearing a seatbelt. And finally, like some folks came and said, could we stop having that? Because people are using it now as an excuse not to wear their seatbelt. We really want people to wear their seatbelt. So they sort of had to address it even more. And basically Sharon Gless, Cagney was like, okay, fine. So that if Cagney buckled up, other people in the country would buckle up. And so it there was a little bit of back and forth that way. They talk about in one interview from probably 10 or more years ago, but the show was such a success that, Tyne and Sharon were getting letters from women who were joining the police force and writing them and saying, I joined the police force because of you. And, Gless is quoted as saying, you want to write to them and say, are you crazy? And Daly would say, I did write to some. And I said, please reconsider. This is make-believe. And the real job is something quite different. But there was that sense that it was sort of writing this, the mood of the country is changing. The jobs of the country are changing. The doors were opening to non-traditional jobs for a diverse group of people, including women. Slowly, they were very much, in some ways, part of that conversation of the time, rather than kind of following it or leading it. I think it was both.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It was kind of both. Because one of the things that I'm not sure you guys can appreciate, because Susan and I remember the pre-internet world.
Old people.
Yeah. And there wasn't the level of saturation in terms of information that exists today. However, what was happening in the 80s is there was a lot of conversation in print and television news that most people consumed. I mean, most people got their information from a relatively small subset of places. So there was a good deal of conversation about various issues of the day, most of which still exists today. So I don't know to what degree how overtly the writers and producers of Cagney and Lacey took that information and pulled it into their shows. I would imagine they felt like they had to a certain extent, because I think a lot of shows did. But it wasn't the same kind of in-your-face, that it is today most of the time. One example of how it was fairly in your face is the Murphy Brown, Dan Quayle situation, which I don't remember if you guys know anything about this, but second season or first season of Murphy Brown, the character becomes pregnant, decides to have the baby. You would think that the folks on the right would be thrilled that this character did not end up having an abortion, but they weren't. They were unhappy that this unmarried woman was going to have a baby.
A fictional character.
Exactly. To the point where the Vice President of the United States felt it necessary to comment on it quite loudly. And I mean, but that was the exception and not the rule. But because again, fictional character, fictional character, whatever. But there wasn't as much of that happening, if you will, today than I think there is now to a certain extent. Or maybe I'm just conflating a lot of things that are happening.
It's hard to say what's happening now, right? I mean, I think that's we're still not, we're in the middle of something. I mean, there's only forward, but I think we're like, what's that Shadow and Bone? In the storyline, some bad magic has created this giant sort of gulf of blackness in which monsters reside, that in order to basically get from country to country, from one side of this world to the other, you have to pass through it. I think we're in it. That's why I'm like, oh, okay. We're on the ship. We're in the blackness. There's monsters. Just,
please get us to the other
side. Let's get to the other side.
So anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Not to,
No, it does. And I don't know if there is a direct way to answer that question. It's hard to, or it's impossible to read someone's intent in what they're writing, right?
I love you guys so much. And I really appreciate your perspective.
Yeah.
And it brings so much to these shows and my understanding of the shows and to our podcast.
And it's always fascinating to have a chance to look at these shows we're talking about through the lens of a different generation who's coming to it with a completely different perspective. It's really fascinating. And really thank you guys for helping us with our discussion about these shows. Really appreciate it. Someday maybe we'll get to do one of these in person.
In Austin.
In Austin.
Yes. Even
Let's
better.
Let's do it. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Until next time.
So for our 80s TV Ladies Salute, we want to acknowledge and honor the recent passing of some fabulous TV and film ladies. Raquel Welch, an icon of the film industry, she started in the 60s with films such as Fantastic Voyage, 1 Million Years BC, Bandolero with James Stewart and Dean Martin, Myra Breckenridge, and the roller derby classic, Kansas City Bomber. She did several TV movies in the 80s, including The Legend of Walk's Far Woman, Right to Die, and Scandal in a Small Town. She starred in 2 episodes of Mork and Mindy in 1979 and in The Muppet Show in 1978, where she sang I'm a Woman with Miss Piggy.
Stella Stevens was a well-known film and television actress. She starred in The Nutty Professor opposite Jerry Lewis, Girls, Girls, Girls opposite Elvis Presley, and also in The Poseidon Adventure. She starred in primetime 80s soaps Flamingo Road and Santa Barbara. She guest starred on such 80s classics as Heart to Heart, Love Boat, Murder, She Wrote, Magnum P.I., Newhart, and Matt Houston.
And Barbara Boson, who played Faye Ferrillo, Captain Frank Ferrillo's emotional, quote-unquote, ex-wife on Hill Street Blues. She was nominated for 6 Emmys. She also guest starred in Murder, She Wrote, L.A. Law, Hooperman, Crazy Like a Fox, and Hotel. And in the TV, movie, and television show Rockford Files spinoff, Richie Brockelman, Private Eye. And we want to shout out some fans that have been reaching out to us. Thank you, dear Callie and Kathy and Rosario, for reaching out to tell us how much you've enjoyed the Remington Steele episodes.
We also heard from Josh, who has been listening on YouTube and wrote in to let us know his thoughts about Remington Steele.
Please continue to send us messages on our website, on Facebook. Go to 80stvladies.com and let us know what you think.
Also, reach out to us on Instagram and Twitter at 80s TV Ladies.
If you like our podcast, please rate and review us on your favorite listening platform. It is a great help to us.
On our next episode, it will be our wrap-up for Season 1. I can't believe it. This is episode 21, 22, I don't know. This season has been a blast.
We've had so much fun. Please join us.
We hope 80s TV Ladies brings you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch, all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.
80s TV ladies, so sexy and so pretty. 80s TV ladies, in and out and through the city. 80s TV ladies, often treated kind of working hard for the money in a man's world. 80s TV ladies.
Hosted by Weirding Way Media.